dark and stormy night in the Ozarks, and around the campfire sat young pirates and old pirates, brave pirates and old pirates. And suddenly someone stood up and said, "Captain, tell us a story." The captain stood up and said, "Arr, I'll tell you a story. 'Twas a dark and stormy night in the Ozarks, and around the campfire sat young pirates and old pirates, brave pirates and bold pirates. And suddenly someone stood up and said, "Captain, tell us a story." The captain said, "I'll tell you a story. 'Twas a dark and stormy night in the Ozarks." And that's how the joke goes. Well, it is a dark and stormy night here in Northern California. And my thoughts have turned to a dream I've been having the past couple of weeks, a particularly lucid dream, full Technicolor, stereo sound, 3D, the whole bit. I'm just going to relay it to you as it came to me, and I think you'll recognize some of the characters in the dream, and it doesn't exactly end the way you might think. And I'll let you make what you think of it, or think whatever you make of it, something like that. I'll warn you in advance, I'm the kind of guy that cries at Disney movies, so if I get a little verklempt, you'll know what's going on with me. Take it or leave it. It goes like this. In my dream, there's a ranch. This ranch is thousands of acres, and there's all kinds of different animals on this ranch, but primarily it's a sheep ranch. And there's thousands and thousands of head of sheep. Now, the original rancher, the great-grandfather of the current rancher, he built this ranch up from scratch, and he kind of did things his own way. Didn't do things the way all the other ranchers did. And one of the things that he did that was a little different is he chose sheepdogs based on some weird method. But he ended up with all manner of different sheepdogs on his ranch, most of which you really wouldn't recognize as being sheepdogs. There were some that were kind of the typical breeds, but he also had German shepherds, little rat terriers like my little Emma, the tactical rat terrier, bull mastiffs, pit bulls, chihuahuas, dachshunds, little fuzzy, I don't know what you call them, Bichon Frisés, poodles, and everybody thought he was a little off, but these sheepdogs, they sure seemed to do a good job. And this is something he handed down to his son, and that son handed it down to his son, and the ranch was very successful. And part of the reason for the success was that these sheepdogs were hand-selected by the ranchers to do such a good job. Well, sheep have a short memory, and one day they got to thinking, we haven't seen a wolf in forever, and we just don't like the way these dogs treat us. They kind of lord it over us a little bit. They nudge us around, and they growl at us sometimes, and they nip at our heels, and they're always trying to keep us in line. We don't like that. And, it's a dream, so the animals can talk. So they go and they talk to the farmer and the rancher, and they say, "Hey, can you talk to these dogs? We just don't like this behavior at all." And the rancher says, "Well, yeah, I understand you don't like it, but they're here to keep you safe." And the sheep, because they really don't hardly remember a wolf, it's been so long, they say, "Well, whatever, we just don't like the way that we're being treated." So the farmer has a talk with the dogs, and the dogs say, "Sure, maybe we've been a little hard on them. We'll take it easy on them. Maybe some of the younger pups, they're a little out of line. We'll deal with them." And things are okay on the ranch a little bit. Well, the sheep kind of get puffed up and proud. They talk to the farmer, and the farmer had the dogs lay off of them, and all of a sudden the dogs are a little nicer to them. But this isn't good enough for the sheep. Sheep still don't like the fact that the dogs are the ones that herd them around and keep them aligned, and they've got a mind that, they really don't need these dogs, and it's just ticking them off more and more that they think about it. So they talk to the farmer, the rancher again, I'll get it right eventually. They say, we just don't like this. We don't like the way that they're treating us. Is there something you can do here? You say that the reason that they're here is to protect us from wolves, but surely that has nothing to do with the way they're treating us. The rancher thought about this because he was the great-grandson of the original rancher. Maybe he didn't have as much sense, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll talk to the dogs again, and on top of that, I'm going to keep them away from the flock. I'm just going to keep them tied up by a tree out at the outskirts of the ranch or something like that. And that way they'll ward off the wolves if any wolves come, and they'll leave you alone. And this was okay for a while. But then sheep, being the way they are, they started thinking, hey, we're really the reason why the ranch is here. We're the sheep. We're the profit center. We make all this wool, and we don't like the fact that the rancher feeds these dogs this prime food and spends time training them and this, that, and the other thing. Well, there's no need for any of this. So they start grousing and complaining to the farmer again, and they say, hey, we've never seen a wolf, but we've noticed something. These dogs, they look a lot like wolves to us. You got to do something about this. We're all frightened. We're all afraid. We don't know what to do about this. The farmer, he's wanting to keep the sheep happy because after all, that is his profit center. So he says, I'll tell you what. I'll put him in a pen. And that way, at least, if the wolves come, the dogs will bark. I'll know something's up. I can come out there and ward the wolf off, and we'll do it like that. The sheep are happy about this. One night, wouldn't you know, after weeks and weeks of checking the place out and realizing there really aren't any dogs out in the field, a wolf comes along and he takes one of the young lambs. And there's a giant commotion. The sheep are screaming. The dogs are barking up a storm. One of the dogs is just so freaked out about the fact that this sheep is being hurt and killed, actually, that he jumps over the fence. He's like a German Shepherd or something. He takes off after the wolf. The farmer comes out. He turns on the floodlights and everything like that. And all he sees is the sheep, giant commotion. And he finds the dead lamb. Well, most of the sheep didn't even see the wolf because the wolf was kind of stealthy. And the rumor goes around that it really was that dog that did it. It was the dog that killed that sheep. The sheep all believe this. And they're saying, see, it's those dogs. There aren't even any wolves. The only problem really is those dogs. You've got to do something about that. This dog, he jumped the fence of the pen and he killed one of us. This is going to happen again if you don't do something about this. Well, the farmer, he kind of goes, well, I didn't see a wolf. Maybe these dogs are all going to eventually turn. So he says, well, I can't really put them down. I'm not made that way. I'll go ahead and I'll build a better pen. It's got to have a higher fence and all kinds of other things, and I'll figure out what to do with the dogs in the meantime. So he builds a much bigger pen and he puts all the dogs in there together while he's figuring what he's going to do about this problem. And off in the distance, there's a wolf watching all of this. He turns to another wolf. He says, do you see that? All the dogs are tied up. All the dogs are in that pen. And the other wolf says, yeah, we're going to get us some sheep tonight. And the other wolf is a little smarter, a little wiser, a little older, says, no, that's not enough. Send word to the other packs. A few days go by and there's peace on the ranch and there are no sheep killed. The farmer starts to think that, well, maybe it's a good idea to keep these dogs penned up, and so he keeps them penned up. But that night the inevitable happens. And the wolves attack. And it's not just one wolf, it's not just one pack. It's many packs from the entire surrounding countryside, and they are on the sheep, and the sheep are screaming. They are terrified like they've never been terrified before, because suddenly, for once in their lives, they are finally seeing what a real wolf is, and it's something a lot more scary and a lot more deadly than any dog they've ever encountered. Well, the dogs are going nuts. They're scratching at the cage. They're out of their minds. They're barking. They're growling. They're scratching so hard that they're rubbing their claws to the point where they're bleeding. They want to get out. They long for this righteous fight. This is in their blood. It's in their blood. and they can't do it. Well, about the time the farmer wakes up and he finally comes out, he turns on the floodlights and he's got a double-barreled shotgun. He fires one round in the air just to kind of see what's going on, and he sees what's happening. There are all these wolves, and the sheep are going down one by one because they're just laying waste the entire ranch. And the wolves freeze for a second, hearing the shotgun. And then they realize that the farmer, the rancher, only has one more shot, and there are dozens of them. And they realize there's nothing the farmer can do. And so now they turn on the farmer. And the farmer's running. He's running somewhere. It's not clear to where he's running to. The wolves can't figure this out. And the dogs stop barking, and you hear another sound. It's the sound of the dogs whimpering. They're not whimpering out of fear. They're whimpering out of frustration and pain, that there's nothing that they can do. The farmer's running and he's running, and the wolves finally realize that he's running towards the pen that the dogs are kept in, and they are after him. And just as the farmer gets his hand on the lock and opens the gate, the wolves are upon him and they're at his throat, and they kill the farmer. But now the dogs are out. The dogs are out, and they're doing what the dogs do, and they're after the wolves. They're there to protect the sheep. It's in their blood to protect the sheep. Well, it's not much of a fair fight. There were dozens, maybe 100 wolves, and there are only maybe a dozen or so dogs, but the dogs do what dogs do. And sure enough, there isn't a lot they can do. Many dogs die, the small ones especially, the young ones. Many dogs are wounded, but finally, wolves, being the cowards that they are, they run away. They scamper off. And it leaves a scene of carnage. Hundreds and hundreds of sheep dead. Many dogs dead. Many wounded. Many may still yet die. And the sun comes up over the valley where this ranch is. And you can see even more clearly what's going on here. And the dogs look out on the carnage, and the sheep look out on the carnage. And the sheep say to themselves, we can't stay here. There's too many memories of what's going on. And the dogs nod their heads, and they variously walk, limp, off towards the horizon. And the sheep, the smart ones anyway, follow them. And as they're walking along, one of the sheep catches up to the lead dog and he says, we're sorry. We're so sorry. And the dog says, what are you sorry for? You're a sheep. You just do what sheep do. We're dogs. We just do what dogs do. There's nothing to be sorry about. And the sheep says, I know. But this time, we'll try harder to remember. That's Zombie Tactics tonight. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.